Hi everyone, and I would like also to welcome the other guests. So please come on stage, the participants in the discussion panel. Hi everyone. Hey Vince. Okay, so my name is Emiliyan Enev, and with my company ReCheck, we have been developing practical blockchain solutions for the last maybe 6 or 7 years. One of the pioneers in Southeast Europe at least. I will give the opportunity the participants in this discussion panel to present themselves. So Zara, would you like to start?
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Zara. I work with ChromaWay, the leading Nordic blockchain company, as Chief Solutions Officer. I'm a blockchain solution architect in expertise. Have been working in this space for about 7-8 years. And I'm also a researcher in blockchain adoption in SMEs. Yeah, that's a quick one.
Thanks, Agata.
Hello everyone, my name is Agata. I work for IBM. I am a practice leader for, I'm a leader of the blockchain practice for Central and Eastern Europe. I don't think I need to introduce IBM. We have delivered blockchain-based solutions for enterprise clients across the world and also in CEE. So in CE, we have worked with clients in banking, capital markets, retail, automotive, and there's a lot of momentum there. So I spend most of my time with corporate clients, talking to enterprises about blockchain adoption. But I have also experience working with startups. I was involved in a startup building self-sovereign identity solutions. So I understand both the startup perspective and an enterprise perspective, and I'm hoping I'll be able to share some insights on both today. Thanks.
Thank you. Got a very important mixture and shared insights. And Vince, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Yes. So I'm from the Netherlands. My background is mostly in blockchain for the past decade. I created one of the biggest exchanges in the Netherlands and Belgium. I also have a mobility project where we have like small self-driving cars that you can 3D print yourself, and each car has its own wallet. And the robots that produce them and the printers also have a wallet, and via Telegram you can chat with them and give them assignments. And pay them, and they pay for their own maintenance, etc. Also a lot of experience in tokenized real estate in the US and in Europe, and currently focused on circularity, so reusing the materials in our environment to create new buildings and products. So we're currently developing a new commodity-based exchange, basically. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And maybe, Zara, we can start with you. And I have this very broad and general question, so please be short, because we can speak the whole day about it. So what can businesses achieve with blockchain, and how can blockchain unlock a new value for the businesses? Can you give us maybe some examples or your perspective?
Yeah, sure. Okay, I think I would start with blockchain enabling Web3 and then look into what would be Web2 versus Web3, right? We are moving from a centralized web to a decentralized web. We are moving from information-centric web to a user-centric web. We are moving from a world that on internet you get access to services in exchange of your personal data, whereas to the world that you are actually in control of your personal data. So, and if you look at all of these, then translate it to the world of businesses, is pretty much obvious that, you know, what kind of values blockchain would bring to businesses, right? So, and also as a business, you can have different approaches when it comes to adoption of blockchain or stepping into Web3, etc. You can have a problem-solving approach, looking into, you know, solving the existing problems of Web2 in transparency, in decentralization, in trust building, in, you know, eliminating intermediaries, etc. Or you can have a totally innovative approach, right? Building a world that these problems don't exist anymore in such world. So you can have different approaches, of course, and that comes to, you know, all sort of shrinks down to the core value that every business wants to have, and that is creating more value for the customer, right? Creating more value that allows customers to interact with them.
Can we say that user centricity and ownership perhaps one of the keywords in that respect?
100%, 100%.
Okay.
Web3 and blockchain gives control back to creators, right? And that's exactly what today we don't have that in Web2.
Okay, thank you. And Agata, you have this unique experience and being in the startup world and going into the enterprise direction, and you have these perspectives about how to leverage blockchain for building products from the perspective of the startups, but also how to apply blockchain in the business enterprise world. Can we say that there is a kind of transition that is happening right now? I'm speaking here from the perspective of the businesses and enterprises. And this transition is about from more private and permissioned blockchains and networks to more permissionless, more public. This is already being adopted by the enterprises. What is your perspective about this?
The short answer is yes, but I'll start by saying that enterprises are in a bit of a tricky situation here. So on the one hand, they see the potential of blockchain technology, especially stacked against other innovative technologies. So they want to reap the benefits of blockchain, but on the other hand, they like control. So they like to be the owners of data. They have been operating in this Web2 data model for a long time. That's what they're used to. And it's very hard for them to adopt a mindset where all of a sudden you have to let go of some of that control. So that's one obstacle. The second obstacle is that they need to know exactly where the value is for the enterprise as well. So we're all great. It's all great talking about the value, to the customer and to the user. And yes, of course, good solutions start and end with the customer, but there needs to be a clearly defined value for the business. And what I mean by that is a business model that scales, that is quick to adopt, to grow, an ecosystem that can grow. So there are a lot of challenges around that as well. And for this reason, historically in the blockchain space, 5 years is a very long time, but yeah, for about 5 years, enterprises have been trying out blockchain solutions that fit better this permissioned model. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically most commonly a model of a consortium whereby different organizations agree to build a network between themselves, and then they build a governance layer on top of that, and they decide who can join that network and on what terms. So that gives enterprises that level of control that they like so much. And also, they don't need to think about compliance, risk. They can arrange that in that governance layer. So that has been a model that has been dominating, and actually IBM has been a huge contributor to this type of infrastructure that allows to build those permissioned chains. I don't know if you're familiar with Hyperledger Fabric, but that's a protocol that IBM has strongly contributed to. It's an open source technology. And some of the projects that you might be familiar with is big supply chain solutions such as TradeLens. That's a solution for sea logistics. It has it actually for enterprise level and for blockchain in general, it has achieved a pretty large scale. So as of today, I think 20 million containers have been tracked using TradeLens. And then another solution. Please interrupt me if I'm speaking too long. Another solution is Food Trust, and that's a solution for food provenance and security and protection in a food supply chain. And this is also a solution that operates at scale. For example, Carrefour, one of IBM's clients, is using a Food Trust solution, and now over 54 product lines have been added to Food Trust in 9 countries. So it's scaling still. Having said
Agatha,
that, yeah.
one qualifying question,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
I was just curious, and I thought about this when you were speaking. There is this concept of progressive decentralization. I mean, you start with something that is more central, you have the control, and you manage this in a more efficient way, especially for enterprise solutions. But then at some point you decide to make this more decentralized as a setup, as a way to involve also other business partners and other users, and to open this solution to the outside world.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that this is the road to go ahead, and do you think that big enterprises are open for such mentality and for such approach to make such solutions more decentralized?
I think it all boils down to your definition of decentralization, and we could probably spend a whole day discussing different definitions of what that is. For me, it's a continuum, and probably as we sit here, every single one of you might argue whether something is decentralized or not. But for enterprises, it's very difficult to switch to a point where they have no control, you know. And if we're making that jump from a permissioned setup to a totally permissionless environment, that's a big roadblock. And it also boils down to internal compliance, risk, accountability. So what happens if something goes wrong? You know, where are we as a business? We'll have to take the responsibility in front of our customers, and yeah, it's a big question. Yeah. So answering your question, the original question, having said that, we see a lot of momentum around these decentralized solutions for enterprises. So they understand now, and we as IBM have also sort of transitioned into pitching permissionless blockchain because we see them as better fit for the Web3 offering. So for building tokenized business models, with NFTs, with fractional ownership, permissioned infrastructure just, in my opinion, don't make much sense, you know. So if enterprises want to make that transition, they need to be open up to work in a permissionless setup.
Thank you, Agatha. Vince, really glad to have you here, and you're quite an inspirational figure, actually. One of the early proponents, advocates of blockchain, and you share this vision about blockchain enabling co-creation and more synergies and this collective intelligence. That was maybe back in 6 or 7 years ago, something like that. But what's happening right now? Do you believe that blockchain could be this infrastructure, this layer that can enable startups, companies, really to offer ownership in their products to the users? And do you believe that blockchain can fulfill this promise of becoming a layer really of trust, transparency, ownership? Or maybe we are getting far from this vision?
So in regards to the first thing, I think like the divide between having shareholders and customers is gonna fully erase. So you got to think about every person that uses your product, of course, as a stakeholder and as an equal community member. So I think the pride that arises from being a co-owner in something is gonna dramatically change how we see brands instead of it's something that we just passively consume, so to say. I'm also really triggered lately by models like move to earn, like where you earn money by being fit or doing good behavior. So I think we'll start seeing more and more like this dialogue of behavior between a brand and a customer instead of just sending. Like the customer can show what they can add to the brand or to the lifestyle or prove what the brand is about. And I think that dynamic creates economies that we can barely imagine at this point. The second question was if I'm optimistic about the future or pessimistic.
Yes, are you still utopian, or do you have some concerns? Or
yeah, I'm a positive guy, so in the optimistic sense, I'm always very happy about how the future is going to be long term. In the short term, I think, of course, a lot of centralized parties will take it as an opportunity to extract more value.
So do you believe that such governments and perhaps companies, they use blockchain as a kind of a disguise or excuse or as a PR or marketing? Or
yeah, well, I think like one of the challenging things is, for example, like in blockchain, most people, they think, it's just magical internet money that moves around the world, but the counter side is, of course, that every transaction is visible to everyone. So I think, like from an impact perspective, we're not realizing yet what this history of all our behavior and transactions is going to allow future parties to look at and base future services or whatever on. So I always say, in the near future, your behavior will determine your access to products and the price for products. And we're already building this public transaction history, and that's something I think is going to be a challenging thing to keep positive.
Okay, I want to challenge you with a question, but perhaps we won't have enough time.
Yeah.
So let's maybe focus on the business aspects, because that's the topic of the panel. I have a question to each one of you, and you can decide who would like to start. And the question is, what are the keyword use cases for applying blockchain in the business processes and as a way to generate value? And perhaps related to this question, what are we missing right now? Is there something that is really exciting for you as an opportunity, as a way to apply blockchain? Something that is not quite popular and not quite obvious at this moment?
I can start?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so the first question, use cases. I mean, probably I don't have to talk about the use cases, right? It's pretty obvious. We've been talking about those for a long time, but it's good to look at which ones would be trending and which ones would be easiest to pick up for public, right? So looking at what blockchain gives public, which is a token-based economy, and allowing every individual to be part of the economy that they create with their data, to share that economy with them, then the more you go through towards industries that are heavily influenced by having intermediaries involved, by getting individuals keeping them further away from that economy, and also the less they're regulated, of course, we see better use cases and higher rate of adoptions. And that means, for example, in art, right? And that's why NFTs manage to pick up, because they're less regulated compared to, for example, healthcare, because we also see perfect use case in healthcare is equally the same thing. Like, you're not part of the economy that is created using your healthcare data today, but is heavily regulated industry. Compared to, for example, gaming, right? Gaming is picking up a big time, because now the players can be part of the economy with the play-to-earn concepts and all of this. So those kind of industries will pick up much faster, and of course then prove a point to the rest of more regulated, centralized, power-based industries to follow later, I would say. But the second question, that what is missing, and I would like to add to this space, is being quite active in this space and looking at Web3 and the world that we're creating with blockchain is not about, there's a lot of focus around technology and money, right? A lot of focus around technology and money. And I think that's not going to be a sustainable way long term. I think what misses big time is behavior, as you mentioned, behavioral studies and culture and social studies and ethics. No one talks about ethics of Web3 yet, right? Although we are creating a globalized world with that in a world that you can come in and live with all sorts of different cultures and mentalities and mindsets, and who sets the ethics of the room? Is DAO going to set the ethics of the room for us? And ethics and social aspects are not considered, and I wish it would have been considered more, because it affects big time our behavior and then our access to the services on Web3.
Okay. Great, thank you. I tend to agree with your points. And Agatha, would you like to pick it?
Killer use cases. So don't kill me, but I don't think that blockchain in itself is an exciting technology. I think it's pretty boring. It enables amazing new opportunities, business models, applications that are built on top of it. But in itself, is just a ledger, right? And I think that ledger is an amazing addition to some other technologies, such as deep learning, machine learning, IoT, and together these technologies can really unlock the value that we don't know the scale of that yet. So I think the killer use cases are indeed in building.
Sorry.
Was that a sign? We have a ghost. Building economies that are shared, circular, autonomous, and programmable. So, for example, you have a vehicle that in the future that belongs to the neighborhood, to a community, and you send it to do a shopping for the community. And because you used your car to do this shopping, you receive, let's say, energy tokens to fuel your solar panel. I just made it up. But this is the sort of type of model that the community benefits from and that leverages these different technologies. So I'm very excited about this. Programmability, autonomy with blockchain as the backbone of that, of these sort of solutions. The other question was, what are we missing? Okay. So yesterday, the guy from LineChain, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but hopefully I will soon. He had a really good, those 5 points on what insights he's learned from being in the space, and I really could relate to his point number 1, and that was that we somehow we forgot how to build digital products, you know, in this space. And I talk to clients sometimes, and these are, you know, big corporate clients who are so excited about Web3 that they forget, you know, about the utility of it, the actual business case. So they want to stack, you know, tokens, NFTs into anything in metaverse, you know, into anything that they're building. And I feel that, you know, somehow in this discussion we forgot the customer. You know, are these new solutions actually are going to encourage existing internet users to stop using the solutions that are on the market now and switch to Web3 platforms? What is the value for the customer? What is the new and exciting experience, if there is one at all, that we're creating? So I feel somehow we have to go back to the basics and just use that really lean and kosher path of building digital products with customer in the center.
Great, and so many takeaways and to digest. Actually, I really liked these points, shared, programmable, circular, and autonomous. These were the characteristics that you mentioned. So this is one of the takeaways for
You could
me.
add virtual to it in the future.
Okay, thank you. And Vince, can you share your insights about the use cases and perhaps what are we missing right now?
Yeah, I think for me the biggest thing is that everything we see in the physical world will have its own digital twin, so to say.
Hallelujah to that.
Yeah, also having its own wallet. So whether it's the building or a car or this light bulb or any device you have. So that will, in the end, I think, eliminate also the need for traditional ownership, where a human or a business should own something, and we will start seeing not just self-sovereign identity, but I think also self-sovereign assets that are not owned or controlled by a company or a human anymore, but run themselves based on how they're programmed. And that, of course, unlocks the whole thing, like what is then the incentive for that asset to do certain things? So instead of striving for profit, it can start doing things for the common good. So it can totally change, I think, like how our economies and our most of our transactions work. And I think the biggest thing that is still to happen is, of course, like I use the example with all the transaction history turning bad. It could be one thing, but you could also see it as a new kind of credit rating kind of system, where now traditionally we always base loans on financial collateral or security. but maybe in the future you will have social validation or behavior as the basis to get a loan. So I think the real DeFi still has to happen in that sense, where you don't need financial collateral or security, but you can do it based on your track record in the digital space, in the metaverse, or in the blockchain. Yeah.
I have to ask you this because I'm really curious. And let's say that we have all these transactions on the blockchain and they're transparent and you can see some patterns of behavior, etc. But does it mean that we'll be living in a kind of a surveillance economy? And where is the balance between transparency and privacy in that sense?
Yeah, I think that's something we need to manage as good as possible up front. One of the tricky aspects is, of course, that traditionally we would have like a system, if we put a website live, we could take it down. But in the whole new thinking, like things stay online forever, they become unstoppable. So these pieces of software that we put out into the world, we can barely predict like how in 10 years this will limit something. So we need to come up with mechanisms to tackle that in the near future. Yeah. Okay.
I'm not sure if you have time for another question, and please let us know. But in the meantime, I have a question that is quite practical. It is about the limitations of blockchain. And we're speaking about blockchain as an enabler, as a new infrastructure, as a new way to co-create value, to exchange value, but certainly there are some limitations, maybe challenges, and I think that we no longer believe that blockchain can solve all the problems in the world. So can you share your perspective about this thing with the limitations and with challenges of adopting blockchain? Zara, again, maybe you can start.
Yeah, sure. Well, if you talk to technologists in blockchain space and if you ask them about the limitations, they always start with, all sort of scalability and all sort of, technical limitations. And I don't want to go that way because I don't believe those are the real limitations. In other way, I think the limitation is mindset and mentality. So if the business leaders understand Web3 business models, if they understand what value they can create with it, if they don't insist on stepping into Web3 with Web2 mentality, they can still create a lot of value. So I would say the biggest limitation that I have faced since I stepped into space, and still I'm facing, is paradigm shift and mentality.
And do you see this already happening, or maybe?
Oh, it's getting much better, of course. At some point, they used to think we are all fraud working with blockchain, but now it's a different world, of course. But of course, the more the technology is adopted, the more we go to the core idea of disrupting centralization and fight against power, and the more we need to fight with bigger powers, right? And it just makes it more difficult.
Yeah, my hope in this regard is that in the future, people will be able to choose whether you're a user of a more centralized platform or user of a more decentralized platform that gives you some ownership and direct participation in the economy of the network or economy of the platform. And if we have more examples and more products that allow users to authenticate with their wallets and to participate in a more direct way in the value of the platform, the other players will be forced to make these changes.
For sure. There is a product, for example, that I work closely with them in healthcare, right? And that was in Latin America, doc.com. And they're in decentralizing, and they're basically dealing with telemedicine data. So they were like not only charging patients to see a doctor, but instead incentivizing patients for seeing a doctor, and then incentivizing patients for every time their anonymous data was used in a research, which today we have no idea how much our data is being used, right? And that eventually forced a lot of other telemedicine platforms in Latin America. They were really interested. They were like, okay, no, we need to go that way because users want us to go that way.
Okay, thank you. And Agata, what is your perspective about the limitations?
So just a quick comment on what you've been talking about. I'm in the pessimist camp. I'm Eastern European after all. And I think it's quite naive to think that that innovation will happen from bottom up. I think that it will be great, it would be amazing if we had users with awareness of where their data is going, with being educated about what they can do with their data. But Web2 has shown very well that if users are provided with a solution that is attractive, you know, somehow everyone stops caring about where their data is going, and they're more than happy to give it away for an access to an app, you know. So I can't see how this is going to change overnight. So I wouldn't be too optimistic that, yeah, it will change surely, but I think it's that there's a long road ahead. And the limitations, so again, I'm going to put my enterprise hat on. And for enterprises, the big limitation is they don't usually need blockchain. So that's a big question, right? Because every single solution that can be built with blockchain can also be built without it. And then it becomes the question of, you know, so what is the added value of blockchain?
But how much I would trust that as a customer? I mean, you can, as an enterprise, you can still build everything without blockchain. How much
True.
I, as public, would trust that enterprise?
You either do or you do or you don't. You know, we don't. Some customers don't need blockchain to trust the product. You know, they trust the brand, and this is how it's been so far. So again, I don't know that it's gonna change overnight. But yeah, and the question of do we need blockchain, also with this permission setup that I spoke in the beginning, the enterprises coming together around in a network, they quickly realized we actually trust each other, so why do we need blockchain, you know? So that's, you know, going back to your initial question, how they're switching to permissionless, this is one of the answer to the questions, you know, that they decided that, or they sometimes often do decide that they have enough trust in their network to actually not use blockchain.
Thank you, Agata. And Vince, you have 45 seconds to share your insights.
Sorry.
No.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. So I think the biggest challenge is all of you. And it's mostly about people not so much being triggered by the financial incentives to contribute and to join these systems, but by making an impact. And I think, like, as you mentioned in your presentation, as long as we treat almost every blockchain project as an opportunity, like a casino or something like that, we're not making a good step forward. So I think once we collectively change our mindset to contribute instead of extract, then good things will happen. Yeah.
Thank you, Agata, Zara, Vince. I believe we had a very interesting discussion, lots of insights, lots of takeaways. And yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.